again, for those that are familiar with our format and how we typically go about conducting these webinars, we'll start off with some introductions. So of course you can see me on your screen. You can also see here, I'm Chris Montgomery. I'm the Director of Sales for ThrottleNet. With me today on the call, I have George Rosenthal. He is serving as the administrator. He is our company president and also our company founder. In addition, I have AJ Rogers, who is our sales and marketing assistant. She's going to be keeping an eye on the chat board and the Q&A as that's happening. And then most importantly, I have Chris Glockner on the line. Chris is our service manager. And ultimately, Chris is going to be the one actually showing you everything that I'm going to be telling you about. So he's the show portion of the show and tell today. So give you some insight on who we have on the phone today or on the line. Chris and I are the only two that you're really going to see a whole heck of a lot of today. But again, AJ will be interacting in the background with anybody who has questions or otherwise. Before we get started today, just to let everybody know what we've covered so far, this is our fourth in a multi-part series. We're going to be doing more of these going forward regarding Microsoft, formerly known as Office 365. What we're talking about today is specific to Outlook, and of course that'll be part of our agenda today. But for those individuals who have not seen our previous webinars covering OneNote, Teams, and OneDrive, I would encourage you to go to our website, ThrottleNet.com/webinars. Again, ThrottleNet.com/webinars. And all of those videos, all these webinars are loaded there. In addition, you can check them out on YouTube. I'd encourage you to do so. It's a lot easier in the sense you can expand the window out and be able to see things a little bit easier maybe on YouTube than you might be able to viewing it through our website. But if you do go out there, and because of course I spend way too much time on YouTube, I know that I'm supposed to first of all ask you to subscribe. So definitely subscribe to it, give us a thumbs up. In addition to that, set it up so that you get alerts for new notifications when we put out new content, which is typically on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So we're always trying to stay abreast of new situations, current trends, and what's going on, and keeping you guys educated and updated on what's taking place out there with regards to new technology and things you need to be concerned about in general. So as we get kicked off today, what are we covering? Well, I think we already established that at the offset of our conversation as well as our invite. We're covering Microsoft Outlook. Obviously, we're doing so in a COVID-approved background. I think these days, if you're a talk show host, somebody doing podcasts, webinars, things along those lines, it is only acceptable to have a bookcase, followed by we have the benefit of also having our logo behind us because we had a custom barrel top that was made for us as a gift. And I have the good fortune of having it hanging right in my library here. And I know that my wife loves that to pieces because I had to take down a very beautiful piece of artwork that she had here and replace it with our beautiful logo. So again, we are covering Microsoft Outlook today. So as we get started, I always like to start the conversation with what is Outlook? Now this was really more challenging than I thought. Typically I can go out to Microsoft's website and pull down some marketing fluff and drop it right in here. Oddly enough, and I don't know if it's because Outlook has just been around for so long, it's just ingrained in our day-to-day practices, there was not a lot of information out there. So with that said, I basically had to kind of come up with something based on some Wikipedia entries and otherwise. And as you guys can hear before I review this, I do have some thunder and lightning cracking in the background here. And I did neglect to mention at the offset of this, if for some reason, heaven forbid, the internet goes down in my house or across the board, or I lose power, or all of the above, obviously one would lead to the other, we will send out an invite to finish wherever it is we happen to leave off. Hopefully this does not happen. I'm on a dedicated circuit here from what I've been told by the power company. Typically I don't experience those, but knock on wood, Murphy's Law, as soon as you say that, boom, all the power goes out. So at any rate, picking back up where I left off, Microsoft Outlook. So what is Outlook? Well, I think everybody knows what Outlook is today. It is an email application. It is a calendar application. It is a task manager. It is a contact manager. It has some note-taking ability, journal-taking ability, web browsing ability, because you can access it online. There are so many components to this, it's kind of insane. But to get to the crux of what it is not, what it's not is your email host, okay? I mention this because I inevitably meet with a lot of people over a given year, and with my 9 years with ThrottleNet, I've met with, I don't know, probably hundreds of people these days. And when I ask them how they're hosting their mail right now, one of the answers I typically get is, well, we're using Outlook. Well, what Outlook really is, for those that are not completely familiar with it, It's really more or less a window into your different email solutions. So you can literally have not only your Microsoft hosted environment where your Microsoft Mail is housed, but you can also have your Gmail account plugged in Outlook, your Yahoo account plugged in Outlook. Heck, you might even be able to have an AOL account plugged in Outlook. But as I'd said, it is not your actual hosting provider. It is a window or an application that allows you to access all that information, in addition to having a lot of other feature functionality that we're going to discuss in more detail today. So what does it include? Well, we essentially covered that earlier. It's going to give you access to your mail. It's going to host a calendar for you, or multiple calendars, depending on how you want to set it up. We'll be talking about that later. It's going to have your contacts in here, and it's typically going to have a to-do list. So these are the core components that most individuals see whenever they're talking in terms of Microsoft Outlook. So what is the most current version of Outlook? Well, I wanted to put this up here because I want people to know there are multiple versions of Outlook that are out there right now. Now, if you're on Microsoft 365, hopefully you're on at least 2016 or 2019. But if you're using like a local installation of Office or Outlook, it can go all the way back to 2010. I put this up here because I want people that might be using the local version of it, or the on-premise, or what might be loaded on your local desktop there, to know that Outlook 2010 is only going to be viable until October 13th, 2020. At that time will be end of life, and what that means, quite simply, is that Microsoft no longer be providing patches and updates, things along those lines, to ensure it is a secure solution. So if you are, for whatever reason, running 2010, make sure that you upgrade that or update that to a newer version. How do you get Outlook? Well, I think most people are aware you get Outlook through Office. So whenever you purchase Microsoft 365, formerly as we've established known as Office 365, or when you buy the local Office suite of products that you install locally on your desktop, you're going to get Outlook as a part of that. Now, you can go out to the Microsoft and download Outlook as a standalone application. However, the cost is roughly $140. So if you're ever considering something like that, I would encourage you just to buy the entire Office suite of products. It makes a heck of a lot more sense. It's much more cost effective, and it doesn't cost a significant amount more than the $140 price point that I had just given. So what are some of the benefits of Outlook? Okay. Outlook has a lot of benefits. I mean, one of the primary benefits is the fact that you have all your messages organized in one easy to use application. What I mean by that is the more inboxes and mail hosts you have coming into it, as well as other information coming into it, Outlook allows you to organize that in a very easy way, and in a way that is conducive to the way that you want to do things and make you the most efficient, effective person that you can be. In addition, it has a lot of functionality with keyboard commands that allow you to perform tasks quickly. Now, in the essence of time, we're not going to go through all those keyboard shortcuts. We'll reference a few as we talk through things today. However, because of that, we did go ahead and have a PDF created that we're going to upload to our site along with this webinar that you can download with the most frequently used keyboard commands and shortcuts that Outlook has. So again, I'd encourage you, if you don't want to check out the webinar, or you've already watched it here, at least go out and grab that PDF down off of the website. We have one out there for the PC, iOS, online access, and so on. So in addition, it gives you ability to manage your contacts easily, and more important, to share those contacts out. I'll reference this later, but I have used this a great deal to be able to share vendor contacts that I work with, to be able to share my personal contact information, and to be able to share entire groups of contacts. And again, we'll be covering a lot of that ground as we go through our discussion this afternoon. We also have access to a lot of really neat calendar features, and setting this up in a way that you can interact and engage with your clients and prospects much better by sending them calendar invites, getting an accept to that invite, and then hypothetically including your V card with said invite. So again, a very easy way for you to keep yourself organized and coordinate your day. Outlook is probably, heck, I'm going back now, I'm thinking I got into sales about 1999. I'm going on at this point 21, 22 years of being in selling. And I honestly cannot remember a time when I was not using Outlook. It is most likely, if not the most common application that I see across the vast majority of organizations that we work with, and that I personally have experienced in most of the companies that I've been employed by over the years. It also fully integrates with Microsoft Teams. We're going to talk in more detail about how you can leverage that to your advantage and how that all works as well. But again, these integration pieces between Teams and the Microsoft 365 suite are really getting enhanced as time wears on. Some of you may have noticed also the search feature has changed a little bit. It's now on the very upper side, if you will, or the bar above your ribbon. So now you can search, and when you do your searches, again, the nice thing about this is it starts to pre-populate with who it thinks you're looking for. So again, very easy to search, bring all those conversations up to the top and be able to review them in a sequential order if you need to. You can create to-do lists that also integrate well with Teams. Again, that integration is key. And then finally, it integrates with Microsoft OneNote, which was our webinar from last week. So again, it very effectively integrates directly with the OneNote application, allowing you to create tasks and do a variety of other things. But again, if you want more information on OneNote and how that all works, or Teams for that matter, check it out at throttlenet.com/webinars or via our YouTube channel for ThrottleNet. So let's get started on things. In section 1 here, and the way that we typically do this for those that have never participated, is that I'm going to go through each slide here. We're going to break off at logical points. I'm going to hand the screen over to Chris Glockner, and Chris is going to take over, and he's actually going to do, as I said earlier, the show relative to my tell, okay? So he's going to walk you through exactly how to do the things that I'm talking about, and I'm going to talk more in terms of how to do those things, as well as some of the benefits that I've derived or that we've seen other organizations derive from using this application. So first off, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is making Outlook, and more specifically when you talk in terms of mail, more efficient and less cumbersome and all clogged up and just keeping your mailbox clean. So we want to start off with a very easy way to clean up your mailbox in one click. So something that Outlook, or Microsoft I should say, introduced a while back is the cleanup feature. So when viewing your mailbox, you're going to go in and actually click on this. And the best time to do that is when you say get back from vacation. I know that I talk to a lot of individuals that tell me that every single day they're on vacation, they go into their inbox and start trying to clean it up as best they can, which in turn takes time away from family, or really can take time just away from general relaxation, which is the core function, obviously, of going on vacation. So that is the primary benefit of this. But for those that have never used it before, and you've got an inbox like mine, which is completely full of stuff, I would encourage you to check it out to help reduce the amount of emails that are in there and help you guys to clean things up a little bit. So how you do this ultimately is you're going to go, when you're in your inbox, I stated earlier, you're going to go to the cleanup folder function here. It's going to give you a little pop-up where you'll just click on cleanup folder, and then Outlook will remove duplicate emails. Now what this means, to be abundantly clear, is, for example, if you ever come back from vacation and you go through and you're starting from the day you left on vacation and working your way up, okay, inevitably you're going to have some conversations in there that are going to have multiple back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. One of the benefits of the one-click cleanup is that ultimately it's going to take all those back and forth conversations and condense it down just to the last email that has all the conversations then included within. That way you're not responding to old emails, as I have made the mistake of doing, and people say, wait a minute, we answered all that. As a matter of fact, you didn't even respond at all. So again, what's going to happen here, though, is that when this is all done, it's going to take all that stuff, because it can be a little disconcerting for some, and I understand why, and it's going to basically dump that information into your trash or deleted items. That said, if there's anything you think needs to be restored, you just go back to your trash or deleted items. Just make sure you don't go in there and do a full dump of that bin, so to speak, resulting in all that information being contained within being removed, okay? So again, just be mindful of that. But the cleanup feature is very handy to use with one click and can serve to reduce your inbox by 30, 40, 50 emails, depending on exactly what you have going on and what sort of correspondence was taking place while you were away. Now that we've taken and done the cleanup, and again, we'll show you how all this works, now it's time maybe to build a little bit of structure around how you're going to manage your day. So what we're going to review here briefly is really based on some time efficiency guidelines, based on getting things done, the GTD, if you will, methodology of organizing tasks. Just seemed like an easy way to start. The real takeaway is here how to create a new folder within Outlook. So in order to do so, of course, you're going to right click on your inbox folder. And what you typically do under this scenario is you're going to create 3 different folder types. And we're going to get into those types here momentarily, but they're really going to be based on your regular inbox, your to-do list, your follow-up list, and your someday list. Okay, just seemed like a logical way to put these things together. So when you go in and create these, again, you'll click the arrow next to the folder once you've created your to-do folder. And then you can create multiple subfolders beneath it. In my example, you'll have your follow-up folder followed by your someday folder, okay? Now, once we have it organized in this way, and for those that want to actually leverage this method of doing things, your inbox are for those emails that you need to respond to immediately, okay, within 3 minutes or less. Your to-do list are those items that maybe need to be done that day, but they don't need to be done right now or within the hour, let's say. As you continue to go through, your follow-up items are things where you're pending answers and information. It could be that, you know, I'm requesting vendor information or otherwise, so I'm just going to kind of put this on the back burner until I hear back from that organization or individual. And then finally, you get your someday folder. And your someday folder could be the equivalent of an archive folder. These are things like, you know what, I get a lot of different things that come to me from different vendors and consultants. And for example, they might send me a really cool attachment for a proposal that I might want to base something on. If that's the case, well, you know what, that's a great nice to have. I do want to look at that later, but right now is not the time. So I'm going to dump that into my someday folder. Now, after processing your email, you can schedule time in your calendar to review and handle these items however you want. But the real benefits are is it keeps your inbox much cleaner, okay? Obviously, then you're down just to the core tasks that you need to do quickly and in a timely manner. Second, your emails are just generally better organized. So again, they're in proper locations based on priorities and how you need to address the contents within. And best of all, it does help you to manage your time a little bit better throughout a given workday. So again, a very effective and easy way to do things. And then finally, before I hand things off to Chris, we're going to talk a little bit about using Outlook's task list instead of clogging your inbox. So again, we've done a one-click cleanup. We've created some new file structure. But in this case, when you have some emails that just really don't require an immediate response, but they do need to be handled before the time you schedule to review the items in your to-do folder, these items can be moved then to a task, all right? To create or perform a task, you're literally going to click on the email and drag it down to your little task click box. And at that point, what's going to happen is it's going to pop up the window that you see here on screen. You're going to key in your subject, your start date, your due date, all that good stuff, your status, your priority. And if you want this to give you a reminder, you most definitely need to set that reminder. If you don't set the reminder, it's not going to pop up like a calendar entry would. So make sure that you set that reminder if you expect that to surface later. Otherwise, it's just going to sit there until you get some time to go back in and actually take a look. So at that point, once you've done all this and you've created your to-do list, a simple hover of your cursor over your task list icon will give you a brief, quick view of what tasks you have pending, or you can click on it and actually look at what those respective tasks happen to be. As I stated earlier, make sure that you set a reminder for these items. So once a task is complete, at that point, you just mark it complete. So to mark it as such and to remove from the taskbar in your to-do list, you just open the task up by double-clicking on it, clicking the Mark Complete button, or you can press the Insert key to quickly mark that item complete. In addition, Outlook's task list is also useful if you're in the habit of copying emails to yourself. So for example, speaking for myself, I'm constantly sending things from my house here when I'm at home researching and otherwise. This is a way to take that information and ultimately put it into a task list for review at a later date at a scheduled time based on a reminder. Same thing happens if you send emails to people that are prone to not responding right away. You can set a reminder that, hey, I didn't hear a response by this time. I can then reach out back to that individual and find out or get the answer that I was looking for. So without further ado, we've covered a little bit of ground so far. Chris, I'm going to hand it off to you and let you take over from here to show what we've discussed.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm pretty excited about this one because Outlook is, one of the main tools you're going to use on any business side, right? So what we're covering today is more about organization and less about function, though some of the function obviously adds to the organization factors. So working on the desk here at ThrottleNet for several years, I've come across, and I see a lot of clients in, and that's great to see. I've seen a lot of this stuff in use already, but maybe some aren't so, present with what to do in Outlook. So that's kind of why we wanted to put this on today and kind of show you some things. So the very first thing I wanted to show you is creating folders under your inbox. So by default, you're just going to have an inbox right here on the left-hand side with no arrow because there's nothing created under it. Now you can create a subfolder under any of these items here, but for this case, we're going to do it under inbox. I did so with 2 items here, and again under to do. But I want to show you that under any one, we can right click, we can hit new folder, and even though it's the same as someday, we'll do later. Now what this does is it helps us with organization. We can drag an email into any of these once we're done with it, and it keeps that inbox clean. That's pretty important when you're getting into the hundreds and thousands. If you guys saw my personal inbox, you would be like, what's going on here? But obviously, this is a test account, it's pretty clean. And if this was my personal inbox, the very first thing I would do, as we discussed, would actually be go up to cleanup here. And I kind of want to show you that there's a little bit more functionality behind cleanup. First, you're going to want the folder selected that you're going to do the cleanup on, keeping in mind that you might have hundreds of emails in any of these folders. So you're going to go ahead and select the folder, click on cleanup, and it'll let you clean up a conversation, a folder, or a folder and subfolder. So you can actually clean up all of it by selecting the top level of the account, or you can select them individually as you need them. So there's some nice options there, and I'm sure a lot of you use them, but maybe some of you don't. So today we're hoping to bring some of this to the forefront. Another thing I want to show you, and we'll discuss this a few times, is that what you can do with an email is pretty cool as far as dragging it to any of these options. And we'll go into detail a little bit about what each of these does, but you can actually drag it to a calendar. You can drag it to a contact if it's a new person emailing you, or in this case, you can actually drag it to the task. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there you go. It's already created the task. What I love about this, as opposed to creating a new task, is that it keeps the context of the email in there so that when you open it later, you have everything already in there. It's not like you're typing up everything brand new for the very first time. So once you get this task, you would just go through by setting your start date, your due date. Definitely want a reminder. Those are very important to me. So I mean, I use those daily where it pops up on my screen, gives me a little buzz and tells me I got 15 minutes to prepare. And then Chris is letting me know about 5 minutes afterwards when I'm not there yet. So definitely a lot of options in here that I think you can take advantage of. When you're done with it, you can go ahead and mark complete. But I would take a second when you do get to play with this. If you haven't, go through all these options, see what they do. There's some integration options. And I can tell you that this is definitely beneficial to any business, regardless of what it is you do. Definitely some beneficial options in here that you might not be aware of. So take a peek in there, get used to it, familiar with it, and see if it works for you. Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, as Chris had said and really kind of alluded to, as I pull things back up here and move on to the next slide, we'll probably be doing webinars going forward as new feature functionality is introduced and get more granular on this stuff. But we want to use these initial opportunities to have these discussions around more of the high-level things that we really find to be most beneficial and most efficiency gains throughout your organization. So now that we've covered some more, we'll call it, I don't want to say basic stuff, but essentially, I mean, we're covering how to clean up an inbox really quick, create a task, as well as how to create new folders. Now we're going to get into some more, I will say a little more technical, but really not that much more difficult. So what we're talking about now is that you can also set up rules to automatically sort emails and stop receiving a lot of these irrelevant emails. I mean, unfortunately, not all emails are created equal. I think we would all agree with that. For example, you might get automatic notifications from a CRM solution that you're using. For example, in our case, if I have an opportunity out there that hasn't been tended to in the right amount of time, it's going to give me a notification that that opportunity needs some tender loving care. In addition, fun emails. You always got a guy in the office likes to share every meme he's ever seen and every joke he's ever heard, right? So do we really need to hear all that? Depends on who you are. Some you might get a kick out of it, some not so much. Either way, though, that's another example. And then really threads you shouldn't be included on at all, just kind of your FYI thread, so to speak. So the countless times that you'll get looped in and it's okay, well, I don't know what this has to do with me or what the relevance is here, but I'm included in the thread. I don't need to respond. And now I'm stuck in this loop of everybody's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and my entire inbox is filling up. So these emails really keep you focused or keep you away from focusing on important things in a lot of cases, definitely more important than the things that I had just outlined. And you can use Outlook rules to help sort through these incoming emails before they even ever get to you. So that's what we're going to talk about here for the next few minutes, is how to do that. It's very easy. So when you set the criteria for a rule, and we'll get to how to do that, you can see on the side here exactly how you get that. You just right click, and rules is one of the options. And from there, you'll do a create rule. Now, when you go in and create that rule, you have some options presented to you. Who it's from might be one way to designate that rule. Another way might be through the subject contains something. So if the subject that you get every time is, I thought you think this is funny, and that's the thing that you see every time, well, that might be what you use to trigger that rule. Now, in addition to that, you will then select what's going to happen. So now that we've established we've got the email coming in, now what do we want to do with it? All right. So at that point, you're going to actually tell it, what do you want to have happen next? Where do you want this to go? So once you establish where you want it to go, you'll basically tell it, you'll click on OK. And at that point, that is the rule has been applied, and those emails will be directed to those respective locations and folders that you have set up in advance. Now, if you just don't want to see the email at all, a quick and easy way to fix that is just to go down to ignore. And at that point, it'll take any emails that come in from that sender or whomever you designated to be the criteria, and that will dump it right into your deleted items folder or whatever folder you elect to have it dumped into. But again, for the most part, it's going to default to deleted items. And at that point, you can do with it what you will. So again, as we continue to talk in more detail about some of the more technical functionality of the solution, this is probably one of the neatest things that I've discovered in using Outlook over the last year or so, which is the quick parts for default responses to common questions. Forgive me for the slide. I see where it just kind of crammed together there on the header, but I think you get the gist. This comes in extremely handy if you're somebody like me who has seen a lot of folks. And one of the things that I do, because I know that I have some people on the line today that I've met with in the past, is that I'll try to create summaries of our discussions. I might try to create a summary of exactly how their current infrastructure is set up. I might put together a summary of expectations, next steps. Could be a number of things. But the only things that tend to change with these are going to be the information relative to that specific client. However, the little headers that I might use and otherwise, that's all going to stay the same. So for that, I need to create a quick part. So to create a quick part, it's very easy. All I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating an email. Once I've created that email, at that point, I'm going to highlight all the text in the email. From there, I'm going to click in the insert menu, click quick parts. It's a tongue twister to say the least. And then from there, I'm going to select Save Selection to my quick part gallery. So again, this is a very smooth and slick feature. Once you do that, you're going to basically give it a descriptive name. In my case, it might be prospect or client summary, expectation setting for onboards, whatever the case might be. But again, depending on your organization and how you want to use it, this is a way to prevent all that copy, paste, or all of that just retyping everything again in a slightly different way. Okay, so once that quick part is saved, you can now add that text with just a couple of clicks. All that you have to do is go in. Basically, when you get to the body section of the email, you'll click the Insert tab, you'll click Quick Parts, you will pick whatever pre-written information you want to have appear in the body of the email, and from there, once you've dropped it in, then you can start adding your customized response or edit it to reflect exactly what the discussion happened to look like. So again, a very cool feature to save you guys time and ensure that you're not just repetitively retyping, copy pasting, and so on and so forth, the same information over and over again. And now finally, we're going to get real deep now. This is quick steps to take instant action on new emails coming in. So if you feel confident and comfortable with some of the things that we've discussed thus far, which again, they all seem to be very simple on the surface, and they are for what it's worth. But now it's time to take a look at quick steps and better understand exactly what those are. So quick steps, for those that aren't familiar with the terminology, is a workflow rule. So basically, a lot of organizations, including ThrottleNet, we leverage workflow rules every day. Every time something happens, we get a workflow rule that triggers a series of events, and this is exactly what's happening. So in this example, Say at the end of the month where you receive a series of invoices from vendors and contractors, and your normal process is to review the invoices, forward them then to your accountant, and then create a reminder to follow up with the accountant a week later to make sure that those invoices were in fact paid. Now, quick steps can actually take care of the last two steps that I just outlined for you with many fewer clicks than what you normally have, and doing this all manually. So to create a quick step, you're going to click the Create New button up there at the top. I'm sure people have seen this with a little lightning bolt sitting next to it in your home ribbon. And from there, you're going to give the quick step a descriptive name. So in this example, invoices, okay? Then you're going to select the first action that's going to occur. In this example, we're going to forward this. So when this comes in, it's going to forward out, all right? You're going to type in the email address of the individual you want that to then forward to, and then you're going to click an additional Add Action button to create that second action, I should say, which is to create a task with attachment. Then you're going to click Finish to wrap up that quick step. Now, after you review the invoice, you can now execute the quick step to forward the email, create the reminder task, select an email containing invoice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This has been extremely beneficial, I've noticed, in just creating a workflow rule to really cut down on the amount of time that you're in your inbox pushing information, serving as an intermediary as you're pushing information back and forth, okay? But the one recommendation that I will give to anybody who wants to use this feature: sit down and document the workflow process. Do it on a piece of paper, a whiteboard, a Word document, however you want to do it, but document it from beginning to end and make sure you haven't missed any steps, because there's nothing worse than creating a quick step, having it apply automatically, and then all of a sudden all this stuff is happening, or at least you think it is in the background, only to realize you forgot a step along the way. So again, I would encourage you to document it very well, make sure you haven't missed any steps on paper, and then it makes it much easier to go into quick steps and go through that process of creation of that workflow rule. So Chris, I'll hand it off to you for a minute here to show us how to do that. So I appreciate it.
You bet. So rules is one area that I absolutely love. And I come across these a lot too. I'll come across a particular inbox that has 20 or 30 rules. So that's awesome to see they're in use, and they are easy to configure. One tip though, and this is a side tip: the bad guys love rules too. So if ever you think your account is compromised, the first thing I would check is rules. They love to take legitimate email, dump them into subfolders that you don't even see, and that's how they get you. That's how they compromise you. That's how you never know it's happening. So that's a quick tip before we start, is managing rules, looking for those rules if something were to happen, and I'm going to show you that now. So one thing I love about the rule is that you used to have to create these from scratch. You used to have to do everything from scratch. Now Outlook will actually allow you to take, for instance, this top email I have here from AJ. I can right click on it, go down to rules, and I can create a rule. This is also where you would manage your rules if you wanted to do one individually for AJ. In this case, we're going to create a rule. So here, it's already filled out a lot of the information. As we discussed, what are we creating a rule for and what are we doing with it is basically what it's asking here. So am I doing it for everything AJ sends me? Only when she's talking about swamp sharks? And then what am I doing with it at that point? So we're going to walk through a rule real quick from AJ. So anything that comes in from AJ, what do I want to do with it? I can tell it to alert me every time if it's something I know that's going to be crucial, if I only get stuff. So like if George Rosenthal is going to email me, I definitely want to see that every single time. Brownie points from George. Yep. Okay, so, but in this case, I'm actually going to move it to a folder, one of the subfolders that I created earlier. And to do so, I would just select this. And over here, it'll actually let me go through my entire inbox. And I can select exactly where I want to put each email every time it comes in. The thing about rules is that it's automated. So when it comes into your inbox, you won't even see it pop there if it's through rules. The other two items are for more manual processes. They're things you want to automate some of the tasks, but you still want to see it. And so I'm going to show you the benefit of those next. But in this instance, if I were to say go to the Chris G folder, hit OK, then right now I can choose to run it now, and those emails would be gone. They go into that Chris G folder. or it can just send every email she sends after this point. So for this, I'm just going to hit OK. We don't need that to go in there. And I'm going to move on to the next part, because the next part was actually, I think, one of the cooler parts to show you today, and that is the quick parts. So to see quick parts, we're going to compose a new email. We're going to go to Insert, and it's very important that if we're going to add a new one, you have to have the text in here. So I would use this for invoicing or something like that, where I know I'm going to have sort of a, and they use quick parts. I'm not going to lie, I would have liked them to say template, because it just feels more natural within the Microsoft environment to say template if you've dealt with Word templates or anything like that. But they went with quick parts. I'm going with quick parts. So to create the quick part, or the template, if you like that word too, you're just going to create the text here. You're going to select that sample text. You're going to go up to quick parts, and you can actually save the selection. You see above that I have one created already, but for this instance, let's go ahead and create a new one to show you. We'll save it. Text. It's asking where you want to put it. A lot of this is just default. You're going to leave it where it's at. And any other options in there. Description, if you go into detail on a lot of these, and we do recommend looking at this, you might want more of a description should you want to put stuff in there. And a lot of your templates will be somewhat the same with only a few things changed. That's the area for it, is the description. You hit OK. And now you'll notice if I go back into quick parts, I actually have two. And what I like about this is it doesn't just give me the name, it actually gives me a preview of what that is, that quick part. So you can actually see what you're going to put in. I think that's a really nice feature. In this case, we're going to put in the second one, that this is just a test. And since that text was highlighted, it copied over it. If it wasn't, it would have just added on the next line. So it's a really cool feature, something that we play with a bunch here, but I don't know if it's really out there all that much. So I'm glad it was something that we could get to show you. Let's go out of this really quick. And the last thing I wanted to show you on this part is the quick steps. Now the quick steps, you notice I have just one up here because it's my test account. I do have a few more on my personal, but it's like Chris said, when you get emails and you want to manually do something that's pretty important, like an invoice. To do that, you would just go up to Create New. And like every Microsoft dialog box, you'll have options to change pretty much everything. Important here is the icon. If you have a bunch of these, the name, the actions you're going to take, much like a rule. This is exactly like a rule, but it's a manual rule that you're going to run each time. Whether you set up a task, a meeting, whether you're just forwarding it, the button will do it. This is where you set those options. Now at the bottom, one thing I really like is a shortcut. We're sent out that list of shortcuts. This is one you can actually choose. So when I click on this, you'll see that if I set any of these, it's a way that I don't have to drag my mouse up to click that shortcut. You can just choose which one you want. You'd click Finish at the bottom, and then with the mail selected, you would just hit the Control-Shift and the number that you selected, and it will run that right away. So again, these are all really cool, like automation type features that I think would be beneficial to pretty much anyone. Chris?
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. So as I transition back here, as everybody knows, and as I mentioned at the offset about what Outlook is versus what it is not, I did want to give everybody the option to understand better how they might be able to include their own personal email within their Outlook account, assuming that the organization that they work for allows for such a thing. Of course, I would preface this conversation by saying it's very easy to do this, but this is based on the policy permissions that you've been granted within your organization, whatever policies they have about you being able to access personal email while at work. If that is an option, again, you can sync your personal email or multiple email accounts to Outlook to have access to all of them. It's a very simple method or simple process to do so. You just go to Select File, you'll click on Add Account. From there, you'll enter your personal email address. So for example, it could be chrismontgomery@gmail.com. Once I do that, I will hit Connect. At that point, it will launch like I'm in Gmail or Google, as you'll see here on screen already. And at that point, I key in that inbox's respective password, all right? So once that is done, though, a couple things you need to be mindful of. So if you have set up dual factor, two-factor, multi-factor, MFA, whatever you want to call it, authentication, it is going to send some sort of a notification to your mobile device, that somebody was compromising, not really compromising, but accessing your Gmail account for security purposes. You do want to have that happen. And if you had multi-factor authentication set up, it's going to give you some sort of notification as well that, hey, look, here's another number that you're going to need to enter in order for this sync to actually start to occur. Once that happens and you get through that process, you'll get your Google window. You'll say, hey, you know what? I want to allow Outlook to do these things. You'll click on allow, and you are in good shape. Now, another tip to keep in mind is you can also set it up so that for your mobile phone and getting Outlook access through it, it does allow you to basically do both at the same time. So if you select that option, you then want to download the application to your mobile device and set it up there as well. So again, that is another feature that's available to you. Chris, I'll defer to you for probably 30 seconds, pretty straightforward on how we go about doing this, but if you could just show folks how to create an account, I'd appreciate it. Oh. Hey, Chris, I don't think we can hear you.
Sorry about that. So
that's okay.
This one's the first one that's outside of our normal home send receive view structure. We're going to click on File, Add Account. And what I like about this is it's looking for authentication. So by default, it's just the application, so it doesn't know where to go. But for instance, we'll throw in a Gmail account. It tries to resolve it, and if it can, it goes ahead and authenticates to Gmail. So at this point in time, I could sign in here, assuming I know the credentials. And it's, I mean, I know I'm going through this a little bit quickly, but it is that easy. It's authenticating off of Google. It will then load the inbox, and we should see it. Something went wrong here. Yeah. So with some servers, you're going to have where it's looking for Active Directory, but it's actually a different type of connection, in which case you do have to do more of a manual thing. But the benefit to like Gmail is it'll show you right away. It'll click on a link and it'll show you exactly what to put in where. So it's still really simple, but that's how you go ahead and add another account. It's an easy process, takes less than 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate it, Chris.
You bet.
I'll grab this back from you and we'll get into calendar functions. So obviously, as we discussed at the outset of our conversation, Outlook is not just mail, it's your calendar, it's your to-do list, and your contact list. We're going to move on now to the calendar functions associated with Outlook, of which there are many. I use the Outlook calendar. It is my primary source for pretty much coordinating everything throughout a given day, and I'd imagine for a lot of you folks out there, it's the same for you as well. We're going to start off by talking about how to share a calendar out to other individuals within your organization. So when you work in a team environment like I do, or like Chris and I, or all of us collectively do, I have to, in a lot of cases, coordinate multiple team members for a single meeting. So for example, I might be going on site to see somebody and need to coordinate an engineer. Maybe it's the engineer and the VCIO and me that are all going out to visit with a client or prospect. And as a result, I need to see exactly what their schedules look like. In that instance, that's where Share Calendar comes in extremely handy and being able to coordinate everybody's schedules. And we'll cover a few other ways that we can do that as well as we talk more about your calendar functionality. So quite simply stated, you'll just click Share Calendar from your folder tab. You'll enter the name of the person you would like to access the calendar and then click Send. Once they get it, they'll accept it. And at that point, your calendar will show up when they choose it to within their calendar list, which brings us to viewing other people's calendars. So now that you've provided them with that access to share, at that point, if you ever want to view their calendar, of course, you have to get into calendars again. You're going to click on the Home tab. You're going to open the calendar and go into your address book, and you're going to browse for individuals that you have access to their calendar and click on it. And at that point, their shared calendar is now going to show up as one of your calendars that you can view. So you'll actually be able to see it, and you'll be able to do some other things we'll show you here in a minute to kind of coordinate things in a way so you can actually see what's happening. Now, one thing that I encourage everybody to do if they are using the View Share Calendar feature functionality, make sure that you pad your appointments on that calendar. By padding it, I mean, be sure you account for drive time back and forth and otherwise, because if you have people that you're trying to schedule and they're also working with other individuals in your office, you want to make sure that you're not scheduling a time that's going to potentially overlap, obviously, with the time they have scheduled. They might be in their car, in transit, wrapping up a meeting or otherwise. So again, always add that drive time or that extra time on the beginning and the end of the actual appointment. That's going to help keep things clean and not result in embarrassment when it's, well, wait a minute, I didn't account for that half an hour. So now you've got to ask them to push back a half an hour because you didn't account for something along the way. In addition, setting private meetings. For those that aren't aware, I would hope that quite a few are, but there is a private meeting feature here. When you're sharing and viewing other people's calendars, you're really giving them access to see what you're up to all the time, okay? Now, for those that manage everything through their calendars, for example, everything from a haircut to a dinner date and all the things in between, you can set those as private. They'll still show up when somebody views it as being time blocked, but at that point, nobody can schedule anything during that time, while at the same time, they don't know what that time is dedicated to. So again, it ensures your private items stay private, your public items are public, and then again, you've accounted for any additional time that you need to ensure that you don't have any overlap as people are in transit or otherwise between meetings. So Chris, logical break-off point here before we get into the next phase of calendars. So if you want to take over and just review those few items real quick, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, so here it's important to note at the bottom, we've switched from the mail to the calendars. And here adding a calendar or sharing a calendar is as simple as what he said, which is actually going into the folder and share calendar, but they also put it on the home since it's one of the more common options. You can do it from right here. I love this option because it's simple. It'll actually let me go through, pick which calendar I want to share, assuming you have multiple calendars for any reason, and you can share them straight from here. So it's really nice just to share it this way right here. So let me go back into the month, and you do see a black screen every now and then. I know some of you out there have experienced that. That's a Microsoft glitch. Hopefully that's something that's getting worked on. I have no plugins or anything. It's just something with Microsoft. But I want to show you the private as well before we move on to the next part. So if you're creating an item, and like he said, you wanted to keep it private, you could fill out all the information here, and it's as simple as just selecting private up here. And like he said, then that will, if you're sharing out that calendar, we'll keep that entry private. They can see that the time's blocked out, but they don't know what it's dedicated to. So it's something that I haven't used too much myself, but I know it is in use here. So, Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me grab that back. Now on to one of the cooler features that I personally have used a lot of lately. And although we covered Teams during a couple of webinars ago, or I should say a couple of webinars ago, Teams does have the ability, it integrates with Outlook, it integrates more with your mail and your calendar. You can view a lot of things in Teams that you can view here. However, in this case, what we're going to talk about is spending your time in Outlook and creating invites from there for Teams meetings. This has come in incredibly handy for me. There was a time when I used to use GoToMeeting. I'm sure I have people on the line today that use GoToMeeting as well. And what typically would happen with GoToMeeting is I'd create the meeting. At that point, I'd have to go in and create it in GoToMeeting as well. I'd have to do the copy paste function, bring over all the details, drop it into the body of the invite itself, save it, send it out to the individual that I was having the meeting with. With join or schedule a Teams meeting, it's as simple as one click. All that I have to do now is go up to the new Teams meeting, click on it. At that point, I'm going to go in and set my date and time and and who I'm going to invite to that respective meeting. And it is going to be very clean looking email. It's going to say just join Teams meeting. Chris will show it to you here in a minute. You just click on that, and that will bring them then to your Teams environment for a video conference, audio conference, or both. All right. So again, pretty straightforward process, but something that I have found comes in incredibly handy to keep you in one place without having to bounce between multiple applications, especially since I know that we are all going to start leveraging Teams more and getting away from those other solutions like GoToMeeting and stuff like that. So again, a very cool feature function as far as baked in that keeps you in the same place without having to jump back and forth. In addition, you also have Schedule View. Now, Schedule View is something that comes in handy when you're now trying to coordinate, as I had illustrated earlier, across 2 or 3 different individuals. Where this also comes in handy for a lot of organizations that I've seen is where they have multiple conference rooms. So you go, you know what, I need to have a breakout room for a period of time, or I have somebody coming in today and I need to have an area specific for that discussion. As such, I need to look at schedule view to see what rooms are available and at what times. At that point, all I have to do is really click on schedule view. I arrange the group through the home tab and how I want these things to look like in schedule view, or I can change them in their default settings. Now, one thing to remember when using schedule view is as soon as you go to 5 or more calendars, it's just going to default to schedule view. Prior to that, what will happen is it'll keep stacking them across your screen. So through 4, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 calendars. As soon as you hit that 5th one, it goes into a full schedule view as you see on the screen here. And at that point, it's going to show you very specifically what overlaps, what doesn't, and all that good stuff. So, and then last, not quite last, but getting close, how to add a calendar. Very straightforward process here. Just click, go to add calendar, click new blank calendar, name the calendar, hit save, close, full stop. Nothing more to it. At that point, once you've created that calendar, of course, you have options on what you can do with it, be it sharing it out to other individuals or otherwise, including your schedule views. But again, just to give you some insight on how to create just a basic calendar entry and build it out from there. And then finally, and this is again a very cool feature that if you've not used it, I'm sure you will after our discussion today, is the ability to take an Outlook email and drop it right in and create a calendar entry in there directly. So for example, I use this feature all the time. If I go, you know what, I need to have all this information easily accessible when I go out on a call, and I want it all in my calendar invite so that I can ultimately just reference it right before I go in. It's all right there in one place. I don't have to bounce between applications or notes. At that point, whatever emails I have sent or otherwise, I can drag that email right down into the calendar feature. And basically at that point, it's going to give me a pop-up, and it's going to give me the opportunity then to key in the date, time, and all that good stuff. Just be mindful, it will default to whatever today's date is and the closest half hour, if I recall correctly. So that said, just make sure that you don't go in there and create it. I've done this myself. Send it to somebody as an invite along with all the details and everything for roughly 25 minutes from now. So again, just be aware that as soon as you do this, before you hit send, that you change the date and the time of the meeting and giving yourself whatever reminder schedule you happen to want. So Chris, I'll defer to you for a few minutes again to review Teams meetings and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So Teams meeting, you'll see, is fully integrated already. There's no extra download. If you have Microsoft 365, it is there. It's a real slick tool, and I use it a ton here. Every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I'm doing about 2 of these a day. So for Teams meetings, you just go ahead and click the button. It takes just a second because it's actually generating the meeting within Teams itself, and you see that pop at the bottom with our nice branding here. And this is actually the link they will click on when they get the invite to join the Teams meeting. Just like any other meetings through Outlook, you go ahead and title it, who it's going to, start time, end time, and you can send this out. It'll add to their calendar and also in their Teams. So it's a slick little option for the integration. Big fan of Teams, as you could tell if you watched the Teams one. Huge fan of Teams. So I prefer these meetings over anything else. The schedule view is something that if you have a lot on multiple calendars during the day, you notice here I've got 3, though they're not much populated, right? Because any of the things that have a lot of items in there, I don't currently have access to on this account. You can actually, if this doesn't look good and you want to know on an hour-by-hour basis what the schedule view should look like, you would click on it, and it would actually break it down on an hour-by-hour basis. So it's a nice way to see your schedule on a daily basis, as opposed to trying to make sense of it in multiple different areas across the screen. And the last thing, I was explaining earlier that you can take an email and do pretty much anything. It is actually creating a calendar invite from an email. So we're going to research swamp sharks here. We are going to bring it down to our calendar. And that was already a meeting accepted. We're going to take an email here. We're going to try to, it's going to do it again. I know it. Sorry, my luck. There we go. Okay, so it already populates into a meeting. Again, this is where you'll want to, as a calendar invite, as a meeting, you're going to want to put, location. If you have a dedicated resource that's dedicated within your Exchange as a location, you can put that in here. title it, keeps the context of everything in, save and close. It'll go ahead and add it to your calendar. So a real slick functionality there, as long as you know what you're doing. And everything works just, it's a real smooth process, I think.
Again, just remember, as you can see on Chris's screen here, that it defaulted to roughly the closest half hour, which is 2 to 2:30. So just make sure that you're aware of that and you make that change and you don't erroneously send that out and they go, I thought our meeting was for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So again,
that happens.
Be conscientious of that. It's happened to me more times than I'd like to admit. So moving on, next section, contacts. Let's talk a little bit about that. So we're going to start off just reviewing how to create a contact. Now, speaking for myself, I have used, and I talked about this earlier, V-cards have been beneficial over the years of me just being able to share my contact information. These days, it is becoming indispensable given the fact that a lot of this interaction we're used to, hey, here's my card. Okay, here's my card. That may not be happening anymore. So V-cards is a fantastic way to be able to share your contact information in a digital format they're going to receive and they are going to have in their contacts immediately. So again, a very quick and easy way to do so. But obviously the first step is you've got to create contacts. And you even have to create one for yourself to have your own V card in there. It's not going to do it automatically for you. And then I would also encourage you to create them for the different vendor contacts you work with, for anybody you refer out for different services they might offer that complement yours. To do so, you're just going to really click the people button at the bottom icon of the screen. If you've got an expanded view, it will say the actual word people in some cases, so it'll be interchangeable as far as that is concerned. From that point, from the file menu, you just click new contact, or you can use the shortcut with Control-N. And at that point, you'll key in all the information and you'll click Save Close. Now, if it's all the same company, so say, for example, you're adding, in my case, every contact for ThrottleNet just in case I need to send them out. At that point, a real easy way to do that is to do Save New and then choose Contact from the same company. Okay, so again, very easy way of creating your contacts, but just be mindful that it doesn't automatically create one for you just based on a signature, or otherwise you will need to create that for yourself to be able to then share it out with anybody outside of your organization or otherwise. Now, creating group contacts. This comes in extremely handy if you're somebody in my position where I'm a Cub Master for roughly 60 or 70 families, I believe, in Parkway and Mason Ridge where my kids go to school. So I could have this broken down as far as an overarching group, which would be the entire pack. And then, of course, I could have it broken down by den if I want to communicate just with those respective parents within that den, assuming this is the method that I choose to employ. So to create new group contacts, very similar to what we did with new contacts. The only difference is this time you are selecting new contact group. Okay, you'll give your group a name once you get to that point, and then you'll start adding members. Now, one thing that you must remember is that you cannot add a member unless that member has already been entered into your contacts. So step one, and the reason we covered it first, is getting all those contacts into Outlook. Once they're all in there, then you can start adding members and creating groups based on those respective contacts that you have entered. And now once you've done that, now you have the ability to share contacts either within or outside of your organization. So hypothetically speaking, if you want to share it with individuals outside of your organization, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. In this case, in the people and the folder pane, you'll click on the contact folder that you want to share with a person in your organization. You'll then share the group and click on Share Contacts. And then in the to box, you'll enter the name of that person that you want that to go to and then change it to whatever subject you happen to want it to be. And then from there, you also have a really cool option, especially for those within your organization, where you can go in and ask and request permission to view their recipients' contact folders. So again, very cool as far as that's concerned. Then from there in the message body, type any information you want to include, click send, and review the confirmation dialog box. And then if it's correct, you'll just click on OK. And if they allow you to, and they let you get to their contacts at that point, if they receive that in the sharing email, you can then open their contacts folder and view it from there. So again, if you're in your organization, very cool feature to be able to share in your contacts and contact groups. This might come in handy, for example, if you have a team of salespeople, a new salesperson comes in and you want to send that salesperson all the different vendors and organizations you partner with in one suite. At that point, you just give them access to your contacts, to your group of contacts specific to vendors. So again, without having to put together this laundry list of individuals, you've already got them in your contacts. Why not just share it out with them? Okay. As we continue to move on here, you can also share with people outside of your organization as well. Very similar process, share contacts, who you're going to send it to, and all that good stuff. Okay. This comes in handy again for, say, for instance, chamber meetings. All right. If you're in chamber meetings or networking groups or otherwise, this comes in very handy to be able to exchange contact information if you'd like to. It's something I've used quite a bit over the years as a way to communicate back and forth with people, not only sharing my personal information, but also to share theirs. Now, for most people, what they'll see whenever I send them an invite, I'll also include with that invite an attachment that will be my V card. Okay, so there's a few different ways you can do this. So you can insert it into an email if you want to, but today we're just covering how to share them on more of a broad scope nature. Okay. So, and same thing here. If you want to request permission from whomever that is, you can do that. But keep in mind, there are policy permissions that associate with a lot of this stuff, okay? So if you get an error message that displays while this is happening, it could be that your administrator internally has locked it down so you can't share contacts outside of your organization. So make sure that you can before you start, or if you do, try and find out otherwise. You need to talk to your administrator, be it ThrottleNet or be it somebody internally that you might be working with already. So at that point in time, this person outside your organization receives the sharing invitation email and clicks open this contacts folder, and now they, of course, have access to all that information as well. But again, it's all dependent on what policies and procedures are put in place within your organization. So Chris, as always, I'll allow you to take over just to give us a brief overview of contacts.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so we're talking about the third item here now. And I kept it relatively clean just so I can kind of show you walking through creating two users and a group, and then how we're going to share those out. So first thing you can do is you can always right click new contact or new contact group, depending on what we're doing. But you can also, at the very top, you have access to those items up here. So if you just want to click up here, we're going to go with a new contact. We are going to type in Chris M here, and really all I need is an email. There we go. So since it's Exchange, Microsoft 365, it went ahead and it discovered the email address that already existed within the organization. So for this, we're just going to click on them, and we're going to click Save and Close. You can type in more, and more is actually better, and I'll show you why here in a second, but Save and Close, and we have Chris M. I'm going to add a second one before going on to the group, though. So this one, I will actually add my service coordinator. Dakota, and again, Save and Close. And before I go to the group, the reason I said more is better is because you do have view items up here, and by default, you might choose one of these views that already include that information. So if you have to pick up the phone, make a quick call, you don't have to drill into the person to get that information. So now I want to make a group, and I want to make it with Dakota and Chris in this group. So I'm just going to click on New Group. We can, actually, I want to do it down here, sorry. We're going to click on New Contact Group, not New Group. Big difference, a group can actually have an associated email address that can be separate. And you have to have permissions in order to set that up. I should have specified that. We're going to create a new contact group here. In doing so, I'm going to give it a name, TN for this one, and I'm going to add members. Now, I said before that it looks at the Active Directory, the Exchange. It can do this, and right now I can go to the full address book and add anyone, even though they're not my individual contacts. But for this exercise, we're going to go ahead and do it just from my Outlook contacts, because we should only see 2 people in there. Chris and Dakota. I'm going to click members here, adds them to the bottom line, hit OK. And now we have a group called TN. So I can email to that group if I wanted, and there's both of my contacts within one group. Should I want to share either Dakota, Chris, or TN, all I do is go up to here and click Share Contacts. Doing so will bring me to basically Who do you want to share it with? Do you want to allow them to see your contacts folder? Do you want to request on the other end them to view theirs? So some options here, if you're sharing contacts, we use this primarily, within an organization, but like he went over some of the options, you can send contacts externally, though you're going to a lot of times get into different permissions issues externally. Because I know on our side, TN, some of that's going to be restricted. But for the most part, internally, it's going to work just fine for you. Chris?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Folks, I know we're running a little over on time today, so we'll be brief on the last section here, since honestly, it is a very brief section to cover. So creating tasks and to-do items, last component of Outlook for today's discussion. So pretty straightforward here, guys. You're simply going to go to your task feature down there at the bottom. It's going to be a little checkbox, if you will. We've already touched on it a couple of times today. You'll go in and basically enter a new task. In the subject box, you'll create what the task is, set your start date, due date. We've covered some of this already, so not a need to necessarily get in too much detail today. Again, just remember, set a reminder if you want that to pop up like a calendar invite would, so that you can address whatever that respective task happened to be, and then you're just going to hit save close from there. However, a more cool function would be how to create a task from an Outlook item. As we've discovered thus far, and as we've discussed, you can take and pull things down from your email and bring them right into a calendar entry. But next, we're going to show you exactly how to pull it down into creation of a task. So again, very straightforward. And another tip to remember, as you can see on the screen here, is to add an item as an attachment to a new task instead of pasting the text in the task body. Right-click on the item, drag it to the task list, and then click copy here as task with attachment. So Chris, give me 1 second here. Finally, in the to-do bar, select a type of new task if you want to. So again, this is a way that you can review the tasks that you have up there, and that's ultimately going to help you to coordinate what you need to do next. Once you're done, you'll press enter to finish. The task will appear now in your to-do list with today's date. In the to-do bar, double-click the type a new task box to open a new task window if you want to, and you can enter more details about that task if you'd like. I think probably the most important thing to show, since we're running over on time here, Chris, is just how to do the drag-drop function, because I think covering the task portion and task creation is pretty straightforward. So if you wouldn't mind taking over, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So as discussed before, all these are options you can drag to, and for task, this is the same as actually going into the task itself. You can actually drag it down, and you'll be prompted with all the information of the email here, so that you can keep it in, and you can go ahead and set all your options. It's the same as doing it through the task. Only difference is this will actually keep data in it. The other one you're going to have to enter quite manually. Chris?
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone, that pretty much, as we wind things down, covers at least what we're going to cover today as it relates to Outlook. Obviously, as most of you are aware, Outlook is an incredibly robust solution that has more feature functionality that could ever be covered in an hour. And that's why we're going to use this opportunity going forward to most likely do additional videos on not only how to use Outlook, but how to get more in detail with a lot of those solutions that we've covered thus far. But hopefully this has been beneficial to you up until this point. A couple last items, of course, as I always want to mention, there is always an app for that. So again, if you do want to get an app for it, you can go out to the your respective store, Microsoft Store, the Google Play Store, or otherwise the App Store with iOS, and download the app for it. In addition, Outlook also has online web access. So you can even access your Outlook account online by simply going out to Microsoft through whatever domain is provided to you to get that information. So every organization is going to have a different way to access their OWA Outlook web access, if you will. So just whomever you're working with or working for now, just inquire with them, how do I get online access through a browser as opposed to going through the app itself, if that is your chosen methodology of doing so. A couple last items we always cover. Of course, how can we help? We are a managed services provider. Quite simply, for those organizations that aren't familiar with our services, this is where we serve as the full-time IT department for your organization, providing you with a dedicated VCIO as well as a team of individuals overseen by Mr. Chris Glockner here that ultimately manages our help desk and on-site team members. And all of those individuals are also, in a lot of cases, part of additional teams within our organizations, specifically overseen by our VCIOs, ensuring that they're all coordinating at all times to address our client needs. Again, most of the things that we've discussed today relate to Outlook, but more specifically mail and hosting of these things. We are a Microsoft certified provider and vendor, have been for a number of years. So again, any hosting service that you're looking for, we can assist you with. I will tell you that we are working on a webinar for Azure and Microsoft Desktop and what that all looks like. And we're also putting together one for SharePoint as well. Azure being more on the hosting side, and I think more traditional is how most people might view it. And then SharePoint, actually, believe it or not, you'll see when we get into it, we've covered some of it already. You just didn't know that we did. So, and finally, if we can assist in any way, shape, or form, feel free to check us out online at ThrottleNet.com, or if you want to rewatch this webinar, ThrottleNet.com/webinars is an easy way to do that, or go to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe, hit the bell for new notifications, give us a thumbs up for these. We would certainly appreciate that. So before I fully wrap up here, I did want to make sure, Chris, AJ, do we have any questions or anything that is out that are outstanding right now before we wrap up? I see a lot of back and forth here, so I think we're in good shape. Chris, anything? Oh, I don't think your mic's on.
I think we caught them as they came in. Thank you everyone for the questions.
Yeah. So that concludes our webinar for today. Again, as always, we get a real kick out of doing these and the amount of participation and feedback that we're getting. We welcome any feedback that you want to send back to us on how we're doing, what we'd like to see in the future, and what we're doing well, and heck, for that matter, what we're doing poorly. We always want to work to improve. So we'll wrap it up with that. Again, we appreciate your time today. And again, as always, don't forget to wash your hands. We'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one now. We'll see you.